hospital executives know is with physicians, inertia rules the day. And what that means is you are not likely to leave just because I decline your request.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Be Empowered, the podcast. This is a podcast where we dive into the realities of healthcare and entrepreneurship. We offer our opinion, unfiltered, unapologetic, and always with a dose of empowerment. We're here to amplify voices, yours and ours, challenge the status quo, and explore what it truly means to thrive. So let's get into it. I'm Dr. Santoshi Bilakota.
And I'm Dr. Shalom Mokbel.
And today we're joined by Ethan Nkana, a founder of Rocky Mountain Physician Agency, an organization built on a simple but powerful mission: physicians first, always. With a JD and an MBA from the University of Dayton and over a decade of experience on the administrative side of healthcare, Ethan has seen firsthand how hospitals negotiate and how often physicians are left without equal insight or leverage. Through his work and his popular YouTube channel, he empowers physicians to understand their value, negotiate stronger contracts, and build sustainable, fulfilling careers. So, Ethan, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you.
I think, probably oversold me. I think when people hear this, they're gonna be like, that guy is a JD MBA. And realistically, Dr. Mokbel and Dr. Bilakota, I'm super grateful to be here with you all and excited for the conversation. I always enjoy talking with physicians who are living it because I think it makes for more practical, actionable conversation. So I'm excited to be here with you.
So after spending many years on the administrative side of healthcare, what was the turning point that made you decide to kind of switch sides and represent as physicians instead?
I don't know that I made that decision autonomously. Like I didn't have the agency to make that decision. I actually was working as a hospital exec, and in 2019 I got laid off unexpectedly. And I remember just thinking, I don't hated how that felt. It was my worst professional fear. And I used that experience as a catalyst to say, hey, I might have been climbing a ladder to be a hospital CEO that I don't know that I really wanted to be on anymore. And so that was a good opportunity for me to basically pick up my stuff, switch sides of the table, and sit on the physician side as opposed to the hospital side.
I remember when I was listening to your off-call episodes, you said that your mother's experience as a physician inspired some of your work and your advocacy work. Can you tell us how that shaped your mission to found Rocky Mountain Physician Agency?
When I was mentioning I got laid off, when that actually happened, I had this idea, and it was, why don't physicians have agents like professional athletes? And, I thought physicians share the same kind of training journey. They have their heads in the sand, learning this one thing, just like athletes. And then you go pro and you make a bunch of money. Athletes hire agents, and physicians in a lot of situations kind of do it on their own. And so as I had this idea, I called my mom and I was like, who helps you negotiate your deals? How do you know how much money is fair? And she kind of illuminated for me that physicians are kind of left to their own devices in some senses, in terms of knowing what's fair, asking for what's fair, and actually getting what you deserve. So she really was the catalyst to me starting this work, because without her encouragement and experience, I wouldn't even have known that this was something that could potentially be helpful for physicians. So that's kind of the first layer. The second layer, which I think is much more reflective of the actual work I do, she was really intuitive about getting my mind focused on women physicians specifically. And admittedly, even having been on the hospital side for more than a decade, I didn't appreciate the circumstances that women physicians are placed in. And frankly, just to, bring this back to reality, I was talking with a woman physician client out of Michigan last week, and we were talking about some of her family planning goals and how does she navigate that with her practice. And she said something that really stands out to me, even to this moment. She said, Ethan, I just want to be treated like a human. And that, no matter how many times I interact with physicians in tough spots, no matter how many times physicians call me and say, "Hey, I got fired," it still hurts like it's the first time when I hear that, because that tells me that in part was my mom's experience, and so I see my work broadly, but specifically with women physicians, as a way to honor what she's done and the work that she's doing as a physician. So, frankly, she's my inspiration in a lot of ways, but she's also my cheerleader. We talk on a regular basis about what's going on. She always wants to know about what deals I'm working on. So she's kind of like an unofficial advisor. If I told her that, she'd probably ask me to pay her for it.
Your mother sounds amazing. Maybe we should talk to her next.
Trust me,
She's
she'd blow me
probably
out of the water. That's for sure. She's
That's
good.
what I was thinking too. We should invite her.
Yeah,
yeah, we should speak with her.
that's a really good idea. I wonder if she would do one with me. I'd never even thought about that, but that's a really, really smart idea, Dr. Villacota.
That would be great to get her perspective and your perspective. I'm sure her and we share the same perspective, but she probably has like far more knowledge and experience than we do. So I'd love to hear from her as well. So, how do you think the healthcare industry could better learn from how sports contracts are managed?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think one of the major differences between sports and physicians, at least in my experience, is there's transparency in sports. When I was on the hospital side, and keep in mind, I only worked for faith-based nonprofit health centers and health systems. We knew down to the dollar how valuable Dr. Mokbel's clinic is to our hospital. But guess who didn't know that? Dr. Mokbel. And in sports, players are really astute and on top of, here's how valuable I am to the organization. Here's the revenue that me being on the team helps bring in. But there's not that same transparency in medicine. And so often when I'm talking with physicians, I'll hear them say things that sound a little like Stockholm syndrome. They'll say things like, my practice loves me. My CEO supports me. They advocate for me. We're a family. Okay, cool. I'll take you your word. Ask them how much you generate in revenue each year. And once you see they're not as forthcoming with that information as you'd like, you see which direction that loyalty goes, right? Typically, it goes one way, the physician to the practice. It's not often reciprocated. So I think the transparency and performance, how much money does Dr. Billacota's practice generate for us, would be a really strong way for physicians to have a little bit more agency in, I'm incredibly valuable, as opposed to physicians I talk to who sometimes are told, my specialty costs money. Sure, maybe, but at the same time, you also probably refer patients to specialists, to surgeons. So, I even used to say it on the hospital side, oh, we lose money on family medicine, because we knew that the punchline to that was, on top of that, family medicine then refers patients to neurology, cardiology, neurosurgery. But we often put that information in a black box where physicians can't get to it. So transparency would be the answer. Long-winded way of saying that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even those who say we are transparent, unfortunately, they're not. When you ask more details, you don't get it. You don't get the details. They say that, we value you, but in actions, you don't see that value. I mean, what is value? I like you, I give you good performance reviews, but at the end of the day, money talks, right? You value someone by paying them, basically compensating them appropriately for their time and effort. So that's not there, unfortunately. And I think a lot of physicians are taken advantage of that way, because a lot of us, our goal is to take care of the patients, and we say, you know, money is not that of a big deal for me, but it is big deal because we graduate with tremendous amount of loans. There's a lot of delayed gratification because we spend our 20s and 30s, working kind of minimum wage, right? And then when we get to the point where we want to get paid appropriately, it's not there, unfortunately. So I think I agree with you that transparency is a big problem in the healthcare system. I'm sure there are a lot of misconceptions that you have encountered. Can you tell us some of misconceptions that you encountered when you look at those contracts or when you work with physicians?
You know, that's a fabulous question, and it's one that this actually happened this morning. So I was with the University of Colorado Pulmonary Fellows and was doing an educational session for them on, hey, here's what to look out for in your first contract. And one of the fellows said, hey, Ethan, I'm a year out. I've already signed my contract. I didn't negotiate it because they told me it was a standard contract. And I told him, I was like, yes, we can say it's a standard contract, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't advocate for yourself. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that one of two things. Either one, I'm a first time attending and I cannot negotiate because I don't have, power or influence. And I tell those physicians, you must negotiate because that's going to set the tone for the contracts that you get down the road through the rest of your career. So one, standard contract, cannot negotiate. For experienced physicians, I often will hear them say, well, I can't renegotiate because my contract's not up yet. And I have to remind them, like, I just worked with a group that was 5 years into a 10-year contract. So there's no incentive for the hospital to come back and renegotiate. But we still, because we understand the economic value of the physicians, we were able to say, hey, either we need to find something that's a little more fair for the next 5 years of this contract, or else the doctors need to explore their options, right? And so as a result of that, they end up getting, $600,000 for the group. But the point being, physicians will often say, well, the rules say it's not negotiable. The rules say my contract's not up yet. And I often have to remind them, the rules of medicine don't apply in the rules of business.
Hey, I wanted to just echo what Shala said. A lot of these hospitals do say they're transparent and they're not. And I think the faith based and the nonprofits are actually the biggest culprits of this, at least with private practice and with privately owned hospitals. You kind of know what you're getting. If they know the value of like Dr. X's clinic or what that doctor or that group brings to a hospital, why is it that so many hospital systems are okay with physicians walking away? So if you know that, faculty XYZ, like they're disgruntled, they want to go, doesn't it cost the hospital more to recruit new talent than just appeasing the talent that they currently have?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question. And that actually reflects the reality that I see is when I'm negotiating, ultimately the negotiation has to come to a point where we say, if you're not able to at least meet us in the middle somewhere, the physician needs to explore their options. And the economics suggest, just as you said, it is exponentially more expensive to bring in a new physician to replace, to have the physicians backfill that current physician. It's exponentially more expensive to do it that way. But I think what hospital executives know is with physicians, inertia rules the day. And what that means is you are not likely to leave just because I decline your request. Now, some physicians do move on, some physicians do leave, but overwhelmingly, in my experience, when physicians storm into the CEO's office for the third time this year and say, hey, Dr. Smith just got a pay raise, or Dr. Smith just got this piece of equipment, I want one too. The CEO has those conversations so frequently that they know how to say, hey, Dr. Smith, like next budget cycle, if I pay you anymore, we're going to end up in orange jumpsuits. And they know that physicians, unlike business folks, they deeply care about their patients. And if I decline your offer, it's not the end of the world, right? You're still making good money. You still have your patients, you still have your staff. And from my experience, physicians will ride or die for their staff and for their patients. It's all of the other stuff that tends to take away from the experience. And as a hospital CEO, I'm going to bet that you're not going to leave even if I say no.
I mean, most physicians end up not leaving, and end up just unfortunately putting up with the same pay or foregoing their bonuses, for outrageous performance evaluations that nobody can even reach the goal. One of the barriers that we hear physicians say is that if I don't take it, somebody else will accept this pay. What do you think about that? What other barriers you have seen physicians use to not negotiate?
Yeah, that's a really practical one because, as I mentioned, I was with the University of Colorado this morning, and one of the things they were talking about was, hey, like if I don't accept this offer, there's going to be another physician that wants to be at Stanford or University of Colorado or Wake Forest. So that's a very real concern. And I tell my physicians, you're not factory workers. You can't just plug in another neurologist just because you're the same specialty. There may be experience you have, culture fit, there may be, focuses you have, whether it's research or leadership or community engagement. Physicians are not all the same. And so a neurologist is not a neurologist is not a neurologist. And so I think it's important for physicians to know, it sounds corny and hokey, but you are unique. And so, yeah, you might say that, well, if we don't hire this family medicine doctor, we'll hire another one. I have never met two identical family medicine physicians, and I've talked to hundreds of them, but they are never identical. And so I think it's important for physicians to know that hospitals are not just rescinding or pulling offers simply because you respectfully and professionally advocate for yourself, right? So you have to understand that you do have a value, not just you, the royal you specifically as a physician have a tremendous amount of value. And if they're offering you an opportunity, it's because they see something in you that could be valuable for their practice. So that physician needs to, in the mirror, see their own value and recognize, yeah, they want me, not just any neurologist out there. In terms of other barriers, the thing that I see most often is just physicians not speaking up. And what'll happen, there's this idea called scope creep. And it's used kind of in this specific context where you start doing, taking on more and more and more. And one of the things that I often find in working with physicians is you'll be asked to, and this is like, I've seen these recently, you'll be asked to see patients more quickly. You'll be asked to double book your patients. You'll be asked to have a higher number of patient contact hours. You'll be asked to sit on committees with no additional compensation, which is basically volunteer work. And then back to your point, Dr. Mogbel, it takes away from your ability to hit those volume targets because you're sitting in meetings. I often see that physicians just will accept the situation as this is just the way it is. And I often have to remind them, like, you have earned more than this. You deserve more than this. And it is really uncomfortable, but the value of having these candid conversations, like the two of you have created an entire platform around, that is the lifeline for physicians. It's talking about these things. It's finding out, like, hey, why did I get a $50,000 signing bonus and you got a $30,000 signing bonus? That's not fair. It's not fair to you, right? And so I think what I would appreciate physicians to take away from the conversation is like, you don't have to take action. You don't have to renegotiate, but just talk about what you're experiencing. And if, again, you guys don't need my kudos, but the fact that you've created this authentic platform for physicians to have these conversations is invaluable because there's physicians who need it.
Unfortunately, some of those practices that you're describing imposed by organizations and institutions on the doctors, right? Cut back on time with your patient, yeah, and things like that would affect patient safety. I see a lot of retaliation in some of these workplaces against physicians. And unfortunately, because physicians don't speak up, retaliations happen. The companies, they bet on the physicians not pursuing any legal counsel. I agree with you that physicians need to speak up. More of us need to do that. Thank you for praising our podcast, and that's our mission, to advocate. What do you think the future of physician advocacy is? Do you think that physicians are going to speak up more? How is this going to evolve?
I don't unfortunately see things getting better for physicians. So, as you all have seen, and I'd be curious if this reflects your actual experience, from what I've seen, watching this for 15 years, is hospital systems getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the number of private practices that are independent just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Is that what you guys are seeing in your experience, that hospital systems are kind of taking over?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
100%.
yeah. So I don't see that getting better. And so my pie in the sky vision, I don't think this will happen, because in sports there is a a league, and all the players who are part of that sport are in that league. With physicians, you're just independent. You can work wherever you want. There's no, even like the AMA, like you're members, but there's no unified effort nationally for physicians. What I would love to see for physicians is a physician union, a union that says, Dr. Smith doesn't get out of bed for less than $450,000, or Dr. Smith is not going to work more than 32 patient contact hours each week and maximum of 8 hours of admin time. So I would love to see a union representing physicians, even if not nationally, maybe by like specialty, right? Like the neurology union, and those physicians are all rowing in the same direction. Now, I often will work with physicians who, as you can imagine, a group of, 8, 10, 12 physicians, even if you're in the same specialty, you don't have the same priorities. Some of you may be earlier in your career, some may be more advanced in your career. You may be thinking about retirement, you may be thinking about family, you may be thinking about professional development. And so it's where I find success, and where I think a union would be helpful, is taking those priorities globally of neurology or emergency or whomever, and saying, we're going to advocate for these top priorities. Now, that definitely means, like, somebody may say, well, I really care about, volunteering on medical boards. Okay, cool. That's something, that's an effort you can address on your own. But as a union, we know the top 3 things for our specialty are these things, and we're going to optimize them for our entire specialty. I would love to see something like that happen down the road. I just, again, I don't know what kind of lift that would take. That's not an area that I'm well versed in, but to me, that seems like it could be a solution to helping physicians be in a better position.
Not to be pessimistic, but I do agree with you. I don't see it going in a positive direction unless we somehow unionize. And I think each specialty does have its own little community. Like we have the American Academy of Neurology or the American Epilepsy Society, what have you. But I think a lot of these groups are really fragmented. And although they do try to advocate, it's probably not as effective as like a collective group getting together, as we're seeing with the nurse practitioners, for example, or the PA, right? They have powerful advocacy groups and they've made things happen. So I think unless we can do something at that level, I'm not very optimistic. We're gonna pause here for this week, but don't go too far. We'll be back for part 2 next week, and we'll tune into the rest of the conversation. Thank you.